Hello and welcome to another edition of another book review. This week I'll be reviewing The Riverblade by T.R. Thompson. I'll talk very briefly about the author, go into a spoiler-free overview of the book, talk about what I liked about the book, what I didn't like about the book, who I'd recommend the book to, and finish off with what I'll be reading for next week. I don't have a cover to share because I did read this on ebook. I did also receive a free copy of this in exchange for a free and fair review. So just wanted to note that at the top. T.R. Thompson is an Australian author. I believe he is self-published. He has a Goodreads page. You can read more about him there. He's published several books. I think I saw that this may be his third or fourth book, and he has a standalone series as well. So he's published a few books. This book, The Riverblade, is, I would say, pretty squarely in the cyberpunk or noir space, and is about a detective in this futuristic world where there's a VR world where more and more people are kind of getting caught up in VR, which is kind of a standard cyberpunk thing where people have kind of gone from the real world into the VR world by and large, and you have kind of a crumbling society around this. And he is a detective character, is investigating this car crash that's on kind of the edges of society, and you have two or three other characters who are also kind of caught up in this web where the detective character is trying to understand why there was a car crash here and who the victim is and what his relationship is to a wider world. There's another character whose name is Cassie, who would be kind of like if this was like a Shadowrun novel, she would be kind of a street samurai character, and she is also investigating because she loses someone early on in the novel, and she's trying to understand what's happening. You have kind of another character named Adlai, who's a barfly who kind of spends a lot of the novel like ruminating about life in this bar, and there are stories, as you would expect, kind of interweave to tell the story of this car crash and what it means, what the mystery is. So I think the action scenes were well written and pretty straightforward. I think that there's some evocative language. There's some kind of moments of fear and terror that are well done. I think that the plot itself is pretty straightforward. It's a pretty quick read. It's only a couple hundred pages, and so if you are looking for something that's kind of generic, my understanding is this is not based on a pre-existing work, and so there's a lot of things that feel like pretty generic sci-fi, cyberpunk stuff. There are vampires in the book briefly. That the one of the criticisms I had with the book is I think there could have been some more world building done earlier on to kind of bring you in and define terms a little bit better, because kind of throughout the book he's bringing in terms that I wasn't quite sure, because you have a VR world and a real world where those two things kind of separated, which was one of the things about the book that I had a hard time with. He uses a lot of repetitive language in the book. He uses the same phrases again and again. That kind of got old a little bit. He uses a lot of what we call vocatives. I believe that's how that's pronounced. I've never actually said that word out loud. I usually just have read it, but it's basically like when you say dear boy or my dear sir, and you kind of directing speech towards people. He uses that a lot in the book, and that there's an understanding of why a certain character would use it, but they use it again and again and again, and sometimes that led to characters not being as distinctive as I would have liked them to be. And then just as the book goes along, the plot gets a little bit messy. There's some nice surprises and stuff here and there, but the plot is a little messy towards the end. You can kind of figure out what's happening, but it's a little bit twisty and turny, and you may or may not like that. I would recommend it if you like just generic sci-fi, because like I said, there's a lot of tropes here. If you kind of like just something that like a detective in a cyberpunk world is investigating a mystery, there's a VR world, there's a real world, and what's going on. If it sounds interesting to you, then you will enjoy this. Um, yeah, so that's what I would say about it. If you want something that's a pretty quick read, it's not really something I think that's too uh, philosophically heavy. There are parts in the book I think he could have condensed. There's one or two characters. I don't know if I necessarily say that he could have cut them, but I think that there's some chapters that feel very repetitive and probably could have been edited down pretty severely. There's some cool ideas in the book, and yeah, I would recommend it if you kind of like sci-fi, you like cyberpunk, or if you like um, detective variations of that. But it is very much like a kind of a kitchen sink approach to it. it doesn't feel as unique and identifiable as I would like for like a standalone world. And I think that could have been, I think more work could have been done by putting like in the prologue or something, a prologue where you're kind of laying out the rules of this world to make it feel more like a unique world instead of it feeling kind of a generic uh, Matrix type thing. So that is the Riverblade by T.R. Thompson. I want to try to stay away from spoilers just in case. I will leave a link below to the Amazon site or another ebook site if you want to check more about him there. I probably will put his Goodreads page as well, so if you can learn more about him there. And then next time I'm going to be reading Basic Income by I believe Philippe Van Perish and Yannick Vanderbo about really the UBI, if UBI is kind of goes into whether or not a UBI is realistic and what the benefits of it are. So, going to be reading that next time. Until next time, please, if you haven't already, please feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, bye.